My name is Neer.
And my name is Cora.
And you're watching Anime TV. Welcome to another episode of Anime TV. You know how there's so much anime out there. It's almost impossible to know what to watch. I mean, it can make you have a panic attack trying to decide. Well, don't worry. That's why we're here. The cast and crew of Anime TV are here to help. This show, I want you to think of it like a group therapy session. By the time that we're done yapping about some anime, we hope that you have made an opinion of what to watch. And we're very interested in hearing that opinion. You want to know exactly how your opinion can be heard on Anime TV? Well, stick around to the end of the episode and I'll tell you how. But not yet. Not quite. Don't leave me yet. I'll know. I promise. Anyway, let's watch some anime.
Holy fuck!
Anime has one common trend throughout most of the series that are out there, and that's high school. I mean, most people like to reminisce about the good old days, and our high schools were just like anybody else's. It had rebels, nerds, delinquents, gorillas, robots,
Hold on.
aliens, a man that rides a horse. That's what my high school was like, just a normal night.
I don't think I had a gorilla. There was a guy that acted like a gorilla.
Well, I mean, most high schools have that kind of stuff, and that's the topic of this week's anime, Cromartie High School.
I hope to get used to the school as quickly as possible and lead a healthy, academic life. But I'm surrounded by people who, frankly, scare me, and I'm kind of freaking out.
I don't know what I watched.
Cromartie is literally now one of my top favorite animes ever. Have you ever wanted to watch an anime that was literally just filled with delinquents? Like, is delinquent your favorite type? Do you want to watch an entire anime filled with it? Cromartie High School.
Oh,
This from the Yu Yu Hakusho fan.
Yes.
Cromartie was one of those shows that was recommended to us, and we decided to take up on that recommendation because we were told it was funny and it was hilarious. So obviously the first thing I did was look up a trailer for it, and I was just as confused as I was once I got through the series. But when I was done with the trailer, I went, I'm in for a ride. I think.
No. I went into this completely blind. I didn't watch a trailer. A friend of mine actually had the DVD, so I borrowed that from her. Just put it in. I'm like, okay, this looks pretty good. She said that it was going to be silly, so I didn't take like the serious stuff for take that into account. Then the opening started, and I'm like, is that a meteor in the? Okay, what's happened?
Why are they kicking things away?
Why'd they kick a plane?
Funnily enough, like I said, having seen a trailer, and that was just before we decided to watch it. And I had seen a clip from the show on Instagram, and it was one of those things where it came up and I didn't know what it was called. I was like, I'll have to look that up at some point. And it was literally the clip of Takenushi eating the pencils. And it was just, that's what I saw, was he dropped the pencil, the guy ate it, he was like, that's not normal. Just drop the rest of the pencils. And he ate all of them. And I was like, that's kind of funny. I don't know what that's from. I'll have to look that up. And then it was literally a week before we watched the show. And then we went into it and I went, I've seen this clip. I know what this is.
It was fate. We were fated to watch Cromartie.
I know I kind of lag behind on some of the animes y'all watch, but since we recorded this on Sunday, I was like, oh, I got a chance to actually catch some of this. It's on Crunchyroll. And I think I was maybe 15 minutes, well, not even 15 minutes, because the episode's not that long.
So, that's something that I wanted to mention, was the fact that the episodes are only 11 minutes long. So
I was shortly into this before I messaged the two of you with, what am I watching here? What exactly is this? And yet I find it funny.
I believe my response to you was, I have no idea.
That exactly was your response.
And I believe mine was, welcome to Cromartie High School.
So you want a little something that'll make you laugh.
Mm-hmm.
happens all the time.
Tell me about it.
So one of the things I did want to point out was the fact that Cromartie is in fact only about 11 minutes long. I went into it just early in the morning because, you know, we all have like our basic jobs that we have to do right now. We don't do this full time. So I went in going, all right, I need to watch at least 10 episodes because I want to watch more and more animes the longer we get into them, so we have a better chance of being able to review it longer. And I went, why does this feel so short? And I was like, oh, it's only 11 minutes long. I'll watch a little more. And I just kept going. So it's definitely one of those shows that you can get into and just, you know what it felt like? It felt like if I was reading like a comic book strip, like in the newspaper, and someone decided to animate that. And
You know what I started wondering about 3 episodes in? With shows on Adult Swim, with them being in that 15-minute range, this was a perfect one to bring to Adult Swim. Like how old is this
So
one?
Cromartie came out in 2003. The anime did.
This would have been perfect for...
So the thing about Cromartie High School is it had that type of humor that definitely felt around that era. It didn't have the animation style for that era. So Cromartie feels like the animation looks like something you'd see in the 90s. So Cromartie has one of those animation styles that definitely looks like something in the 90s. It was in that era of like 90s, 2000 where we didn't quite switch over into 2000 animation quite just yet. So I honestly thought it was a 90s show, and the humor reminded me of, because in that time we had a lot of like gag series that were coming out.
Yeah.
So we had things like Bo Bo Bo, Bo 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 Bo, and like a few other ones. Bo 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 is the only one that I can actually remember off like the top of my head.
Yeah.
But it kind of had a reminiscence of that. But the difference was as well, Bo 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 is like, hey, we're actually going out having like an action series that's just nonstop comedy. This was something subtle where it was like, hey, we're going to take the comedy that you would normally get in a high school drama anime, and we're just going to take it up to like a 13 out of 5, and then we're just going to roll with it. And it was one of those things where it had both too much in-your-face humor and enough subtle humor.
Yeah. My favorite thing about this show is the fact that there are some students that go here that the only people that question it are your main character and his best friend. Those are the only people that question the existence of Freddy.
Well, anyone outside of the school too.
To a point.
To a point.
To a point. In the case of the best character, Mekazawa, nobody, absolutely no one except your main character and best friend question his existence. Every other thug from the other rival schools still consider him a student and not a robot.
I don't care about what happens to you, but if you're not around, who's going to take care of that mother of yours? Have you thought about that?
So here's the artwork that I was trying to get to. My head has now replaced the main character. So I'll have to see this one.
It was one of those things that I thought, okay, they've introduced little characters that just don't make sense, and then they just kept escalating it. So like episode 1, you've got your main character, who is the most normal looking character in the entire world.
He's so polite.
He's just the most
Not
plain.
a bug.
But then you introduce his new best friend, which has the purple mohawk that won't stop moving. And I was like, that's going to bother me. And it never stopped bothering me.
One of the characters supposed to be smoking a cigarette and they just got rid of it and he has that weird...
No, that's just there.
I want to say that's intentional. The weird like poop thing that they have on there.
That is completely intentional.
So
wow.
They kept escalating it. So it was like, okay, well, I hear that this bigger badass that's over here. And they introduced like Takanashi, and he's just this really big brute of a guy. And then like, oh, well, there's somebody else. And then Freddie Mercury shows up. And
No one knows his name. They just give him the nickname Freddy.
Also, I think it looks like Mike Hager from Final Fight.
Okay. But
suspenders.
It was just really funny though, because anyone that actually knows Freddie Mercury or seen any like past videos of him, he's clearly not that big and bulky. It's just what would happen if you put Freddie Mercury on steroids and then made him the politest guy in the world.
I don't know about steroids, just a nice workout regimen.
He's also like, I think he's bigger than the gorilla.
He is one of the kindest characters and might be one of my favorites, even though he doesn't talk. And then you have, then they introduce the gorilla, and then they introduce Mekazawa, who is just, the robot. My favorite character is I want to say his name is Takanashi, but I think they call him Radio Gaga or something like that. He's the badass from the other school.
Radio Gaga is the name of the cafe they went to.
Okay.
So isn't just stupid, it's really confusing. But if I say it's stupid without thinking, people might say it's because I'm old-fashioned. Oh, what a miserable time to be alive. We can't say something stupid even when it's genuinely stupid anymore.
So it's the guy with the big fro, and he every single thought he had was like my internal monologue in high school as well. He was just like, man, I know I look so cool, but it's just because I'm afraid to speak up. But man, I got really funny jokes. And he just wants to be a comedian the whole time. And like hearing him debate himself about something that has nothing to do with what the other characters are talking just made me lose it every time he was on screen.
He's also like top tier good boy there.
I posted it on Instagram, and I know me and you both kind of posted it on Instagram that we were watching this show because we were doing. But he had like the perfect thought process of what I was thinking of. Because I had, at this point, you know, I've gotten like 10 episodes into the show, and I was just like, this show's so stupid. But I can acknowledge what is happening in this show to understand that it's funny. And then they had an entire episode about a show that they didn't understand, but everybody loved. And he's sitting there going, I don't understand. This is just a stupid time. Like, you can't even say when something's stupid. And I was like, thank you.
And I feel like that was like an acknowledgement of themselves.
That's what it felt like.
Meta joke there.
Like, there's so many different characters in this show that are just absolutely hilarious. Like, we were talking about Mekazawa earlier. And we'll kind of dive into this in a second as well. I watched the dub, and the dub voice they picked for Mekazawa I thought was beautiful. Like, it's just that smooth, sultry type of voice, and it doesn't fit a robot, and it doesn't fit anyone, and yet they gave it to the robot, and I just kind of rolled with it.
Come here! Oh! Idiots! How many times have I told you not to do things that are bad for your health?
And then they just made it weirder by making Mekazawa's brother show up, and then he...
The whole episode with Mekazawa's brother.
Mini Mekazawa.
Yeah, his little brother... That was great because he just kept getting smaller.
He just increasingly kept getting smaller, and he kept trying to relate it back to a cell phone, and then he became a cell phone. Like, this show is just what happens when you gave a comedy writer a script and like a pen and a pencil, say write a script, and then you just say, by the way, there's no limits, and you just kept going.
The only thing you have to keep in mind is they're all delinquents, and that's it. Like, that's it.
And then he forgot they were delinquents. Like, they talk about getting into fights, but no one has fought anyone.
Like, and I think that's the best joke of all is, like, you see people get beat up from, like, the other schools, or, like, kids from the other schools get into fights. Literally nobody in Cromartie has gotten into a fight.
I got the feeling they were all posers, you know, just those kids that I knew from high school.
But see, that's what makes it even funnier, because Cromartie has the reputation of being the baddest thug school ever. Like, it's the one where all of the really bad kids go to. That's the reputation it has, but no one does anything. Which I guess also works with the main character. We don't know. In the anime, you don't know why he's there.
That bothered me.
Like, they legit said, if you want to know, read the manga.
God.
Which is like, now I want to know, but I also understand after watching this show, it's going to be something so dumb that I'm going to be mad that I had to look it up.
I never looked it up.
I didn't
but
either.
It was one of those things that, you know, we went into this with the small knowledge of the fact that they were going to do something like that. I hate when animes tell me to read the manga, because the reason I am here watching an anime is because I want to watch the story unfold, not do more research behind that story. There are some stories, like non-anime related, where we'll all go back and read it. Like, I know Jason and I will research things like Star Wars and stuff like that outside of Star Wars because it's just interesting to see. But it's one of those things where in this particular case, like, apparently he had to go to the school for a reason, and he was like, well, you should read the manga and find out. And I was like, well, I don't want to.
But I feel like that was, like, for the anime, that was part of the joke. Because, like, shows like this, they thrive off of that, and they're still meta and acknowledge to a degree that they're a show. Like, the next episode, he's like, you know, people have been complaining about the voice acting and the character design, and he changed into a cute anime girl with a high-pitched voice,
That one was funny.
And then changed back. He's like, no, I'll just be myself. And then he just doesn't move. And then he finally moves just because. And acknowledge the fact that the animation budget was low, so he wasn't moving. And so like there's that meta there. And I honestly, with the, if you want to know, go read the manga, it felt more like a continuation of a meta joke or it felt like the start of the meta jokes more so. And I understand the frustration with it, but I also feel like, again, the reason he's there is like stupid, and it's just going to make you more upset to read the manga and just to find out. Or it's not going to come until like the end or something like that. So I'm not sure.
It's one of those things where that story itself, you're going in there, and I will acknowledge this. Very rarely when it comes to anime are there shows that you can go into and just pick an episode and be fine with it. But then that's because animes generally have a long story arc, regardless if it's only supposed to be a season or if it lasts 10 years. It's one of those things where it's start to finish. You have to know everything in order to get there. And I love those types of stories.
Yeah.
That's why I'm there. Doesn't matter if it's like a romance story. It doesn't matter if it's an action story. It's a story. That's what I'm here to enjoy. But that was one of those shows that kind of took me out of the mindset of, well, just like any other country, you have some random kid show that's meant to be a kid show. Cromartie's not necessarily a kid show, but it had that style of, here's an episode. You missed last week's, no big deal. Here you go. Here's another one. And it kind of reminds me that just like anywhere else, Japan also has those types of TV programs. But it was one of those things where you could just jump into any episode and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Like, I do recommend watching the first episode just to get that nice ease into it, and then just pick an episode, because I mean they even showcase characters in the first few episodes that don't officially show up until later.
Like I said, I made it all the way like a little past episode 10, and even then they still haven't shown every character, and they make that joke too. Like normally at the end of like a preview show, they'd say, hey, look, there's a character coming up, or this is what's happening in the next story. And there was an actual preview where they're like, by the way, we still haven't introduced every character, but don't expect that to happen next episode either, so bye.
Yeah. Like, I love it. So,
you were talking about Noburo. Nobura?
I don't remember
Yamaguchi.
The names didn't stick.
Okay, they said he was part of a gang called Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'm like...
No, Earth, Wind, Fire, and Water.
Yeah, stop. Stop right now. Also, the Unsinkable Battleship. That's actually a reference to one of my favorite wrestlers, Stan Hansen, who was very popular in Japan, which I thought was kind of a nice throwback for this.
And see, I'm getting a lot of references. I'm getting a lot of references like that in the show, like Earth, Wind, Fire, and Water being the gang, that one, and like
Freddy's mic stand being broken. Come on.
Freddy's just entire existence.
Freddy was great. Like,
there's an episode. It's probably one of my favorites, and I know you didn't like it as much, and it's the episode where there's a song stuck in their head. And it opens up with the gorilla playing a guitar, and you never hear Freddy sing, but he's doing like the
poses of any other member of Queen.
Yeah, he's doing all the Freddy poses.
Yeah, what was that, episode 2 that they pushed back the
three.
Well, I'm talking about when they pushed back the door and the gorillas.
Oh yeah, that's episode 2.
I had to stop. I'm like, they've introduced a gorilla. Like, I need to get up and take a walk for a little bit.
One of the last episodes I watched, they do that thing where you think the joke has already died because they've already pushed it like multiple episodes. So they had one where like they had another high school sneak into that high school because they were trying to get to the big bad of the first years, and they're on the phone and they're just like, we can't get in. And they're like, why? They're like, because we've seen some disturbing stuff. For one, there are horseshoes in the ground the size of an elephant. And they're like, well, is it an elephant or a horse? And I'm like, okay, we get it. Freddy rides a horse. I get it. I understand. There's like, yes, but we found something disturbing. It's a vending machine with no coin slots, and it's Mekazawa again. And they're just like, okay, well, now we found a gorilla. There's an actual gorilla here. And he was like, okay.
Is it a guy that looks like a gorilla? No,
like, no,
it's a gorilla.
It's a gorilla. And they're like, do you have a gorilla going to your school? He's like, yeah, but we're not really sure if he's a student or...
Yeah, they've kidnapped a kid from Cromartie, and they're saying all of these, and he's just hanging from the ceiling, tied up, and you're just like, yep, that sounds about right. He is not phased at all. There's a vending machine with no coin slot. Yeah, it's probably Mekazawa.
And it's funny though because they keep introducing something new. So at that point, I'm like, all right, I know basically the gist of the cast of characters here. So I don't need. There's nothing else that's gonna surprise me. And they're like, we found something else. And he was like, what could be more disturbing than gorilla? Aliens? He's like, how'd you know? And then there was aliens, and I was just like, okay, we're here now. Welcome to Cromartie.
Yep.
And there's Takanochi, the mascot. Yeah, he tried to hijack a plane. He's not a delinquent. He's a terrorist. Why is he in the school and not doing 50 years?
Well, you see, he took the place of the real Takanuchi, who got sent to America and is somewhere in Nevada.
In the desert, right.
In the desert.
This was one of those shows that it was really a good show that we went in blind, not expecting what to see.
Oh, yeah.
It like some of those shows that we can pick something, and I can guarantee you there's a lot of bad ones out there, and there's a lot of good ones, and there's some that were kind of like on the fence. Like last week when we did Gamers. Yeah. Like I enjoyed Gamers, not everybody enjoyed Gamers. It was just one of those things, but there are other shows. But this one was just like, even by the time I've finished watching what I've watched, I'm not entirely sure if I've actually watched it or if like I just got drunk behind an Applebee's again and that's what I saw. It's just one of the other
so class. I mean, really, an Applebee's, really?
I mean, it's right there. So.
It's everywhere. All right, there's always an Applebee's somewhere. That's not the point. One of the things I wanted to talk about as well was the music. The music is one of those things, we talk about this as well because we like to talk about like the story and stuff like that. There is no story. So we'll throw that category out the window.
Yeah, we're just going to throw the story category out.
Amateurs should try bleaching their hair blonde to look tough. Be careful. If the chemicals are too strong, your hair will turn white and you'll look like a pussy. Damn it.
But like the music wasn't bad. It's just another one of those shows with the main intro didn't draw me in. The visuals of it absolutely did.
So like, here's my favorite thing about the opening. And I was talking to my friend about this because I love the opening. I like how just mellow and calm it is. It's like the actual music for the intro is all a lie because it's like if you just looked up the opening and don't like actually watch the visuals, just listen to it, it sounds like a decently serious anime from like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, and it had that ring to it
and everything, but then you watch the visuals and it's completely different. It's crazy and insane, and I feel like that's the show. The show was marketed, like as far as the stuff that I found, as being a more serious thug show, and then you watch it
and here you are. It like I said, the song itself didn't necessarily stick with me. It was a little too slow in my opinion, but at the same time, there's slow songs, there's fast songs. But like the visuals, you're just sitting there going, okay, I think I know what's happening. And then once you're done, you're still not ready.
No. Like...
But like we said, there's no action in this show. It's all comedy from start to finish. And because of that, there's not really a whole lot of soundtrack to go with it.
Yeah. The sound effects, though.
The sound effects were key.
I love it. I love it. Like, there are some, it's like, I don't know if that was the sound effect y'all meant to use, but I'm glad you used it.
It doesn't even matter. They could have had that horse make a lion sound, and I would have been like, and they could have done that by accident, and I would have fully accepted they had done that intentionally based off what this show was.
Exactly. My favorite thing is anytime Freddy shows up, there's a guitar string, like a guitar, like ding.
That I liked.
Anytime he's on screen and they just play this guitar riff, like this electric guitar riff whenever he's on, however long he's there.
I like Freddy because he just kept showing up at different moments, but you could tell he was there to be nice. So they were like, all right, we got to go save another student. And Freddy was just in the car. Or, okay, we're in the wrong classroom and they're hitting Freddy. And Freddy's like, these are my buds. It's just...
Get up, Freddy. You're sitting at my desk.
Yeah, get up. This isn't even your classroom.
Look, you dumbasses. Our classroom is next door.
Hey, Freddy, guess what? We came into the wrong classroom today.
The thing is, though, there is one episode, I don't know if you've gotten to it, Freddy does something that's kind of a bitch move. They're all lost in Fiji Forest because they wanted to play baseball. And that whole escalation is great. And Freddy's there, and they're like day 3, and he just like, while they're wallowing in self-pity and can't leave, he just leaves, finds a ramen shop, eats ramen, and goes back and acts like nothing happened. And the ramen people are like, he's been here every day for 3 days eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Is he okay? I want to, like, they're trying to figure out the mystery of Freddy, and then he goes back and they didn't notice he's gone. and everything's fine. Later they find a fish cake on his cheek and they think that there's food immediately around them.
It's Freddy is an amazing character.
He really is.
That said, we did have certain complaints with certain parts of the show. We each took a dive into sub and dub with this type around. I watched the dub. I know you watched both.
Yes.
And I know you watched the sub.
Yes.
So we all kind of got a taste. I didn't watch any of the sub, so I went in there just with the dub aspect, and I didn't mind it, but I've seen better. There's a lot of moments in the show's dubbing where things were kind of funny because of the way that it was laid back, but I think I best described it before the show. It's like you and I and everybody in the cast could have found this show when we need a dub version of this, and then we just took it and did it ourselves. It felt the same way. And there are moments in that are funny because the line delivery. So like there's one of them that like it's the first line he says. He's like, "Dearest mother, I'm going to do really well, but I'm surrounded by a lot of people and I'm freaking out right now." I'm like, that's something that I would say. And that's something that I found amusing because of the way they did it. And then there were just certain lines that weren't delivered properly. It's like somebody just took it, said we're going to release it, and then they just did it on the weekends.
Yeah. And see, my biggest complaint between the sub and the dub was I didn't mind the voice acting for the dub. I thought it was actually done decent. Like the voices they picked for the characters fit pretty decently.
It fit with the tone they were going with.
Yeah. But there were, what I noticed, quite a few jokes that didn't translate well from Japanese into English, because there are certain things that feel more Japanese, and so it's funnier in context. And when you try to translate it into English, it doesn't work well. Like I mentioned with the humming episode, the English dub, it didn't feel like they picked a particular song to hum. The whole joke is that they don't know what the song is they're humming. And in the manga, they probably just never picked a song, to be honest, because they didn't have to. For this, you have to pick one, or else the joke isn't funny. And they did, but the English didn't. It felt like they were off tune the whole time.
I skipped that episode a lot.
I recommend going back and watching it in the sub because everyone actually has a part. And like the joke is they all know the song. They all know different parts of the song, and then they come together and harmonize the whole song together, but no one knows the title. And they give you the title at the very end, and I'm not going to spoil it, but I highly recommend watching that episode and then going and looking up the song because you'll be mad. You'll laugh, but you'll be mad. But like that joke didn't translate well into English. And it felt like some of the script for the Japanese was written funnier and made more sense than the English.
I mean, that's a lot of problems with a lot of animes to begin with. It's just translating between Japanese and English because certain words don't translate well between languages. And the way that you have certain things, like this is a really good example, and it's one that's talked about a lot, so it resonates well, is Naruto. Naruto does a really good job kind of between sub and dub, but you have to realize that over in Japan, Naruto says Datebayo a lot, which from what I understand doesn't really have a meaning over in Japan. But because he says the words, it's still there, and you can't edit out clips from the show in order to translate. So they put in "believe it," which was a stupid catchphrase, but they did with what they could at the time. So it's one of those things where something over in Japan sounds just fine, but then over in America sounds stupid, and that's kind of where the big debate between dub and sub goes. We've talked about this before on the show. We don't really have a preference. It's like, I don't care for dub or sub either. Like, one's not a preference over the other. I watch both. I generally will watch the same show, both dub and sub, because I either enjoy it that much. Like in certain cases, like My Hero Academia, which we have a lot of figures on the table now. I watched the sub first because it came out first. And then I wanted to rewatch the dub because they did a good job with the dubbing. So both are good. And we generally use dub clips on the show just for people to kind of understand what they're saying. But, I mean, if you have a preference, go and watch one or the other. Because in this case, the sub is better. But we use dub clips so you can kind of see what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, the clips we use for this, those jokes are fine.
Yeah.
For me, it was mostly the humming joke because that episode was so much funnier with the sub.
Overall, the voice acting didn't do too bad. I know they did what they could. And like I said, the voice acting fit the tone of that show. But if I had put that style of voice acting in any other show, it wouldn't fit well.
No.
It's one of those things where it wouldn't have drawn me in. But because of the way I was so interested in what was happening in the show, trying to figure out what was happening, that I didn't mind. I was just like, what is happening?
There are bigger concerns.
There were a lot of bigger concerns.
What did you think about the voice acting, Jason?
I'm taken aback a little bit by it. I was kind of like, why is this kind of crappy? But then, like you said, other things started happening. And that became, like there's a bee on me or there's an elephant in my yard. I was like, why is this so bad? But then I didn't care after a while. I just didn't care because there's a gorilla. Like, that was the one where I was like, I need to accept what I'm watching and just continue on.
Normally, when I go into a show, depending on what show I am, I go, okay, I need to extend my disbelief a little bit, and I will love what I'm watching. When I got to this show, it was like, I need to throw out my extension of disbelief. It's just gone. It's just whatever happens, happens, and we just roll from here.
Yeah, that's the show.
Overall, what are our final opinions on Cromartie High?
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
Just because of what this show is, I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
I'm going to have to give it a watermelon out of 6 robots.
Perfect.
So there you go. Biggest question now is going to be, what do our fans think?
All right, this is from Adam H. of Shreveport, Louisiana. Cromartie was such a random show. It was funny and quick. Something you can just put on in the morning and let it start the day off right. Very well spoken. I agree. I want to start my day off with idiot delinquents.
Mike L. from Utah. Welcome back, Negative Nancy. This show is trying too hard to be funny. There are so many better comedy shows out there with better jokes and plots. I did like the robot, though.
Everybody loves the robot.
That's him? Is this dude in high school? Is he Japanese? It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Kamiyama. I'm from year 1, class 2. So what's your name?
Even our negative Nancys love the robot, which should tell you something about Mikasawa.
All right. Cromartie High School is currently licensed by Discotech Media and does have a run on TV Tokyo. You can find it on Crunchyroll here in the States, both in dub and sub. Go and check out the official release.
Please, just give it one episode.
We will be back again in 2 weeks with our 5th episode, which is always going to be 5 times the fun. So next time we'll be reviewing the quintessential quintuplets, which is a whole title in of itself. If you would like to help us with our review of the next anime, which is the quintessential quintuplets, feel free to DM us over at Anime TV Cast, or you can DM Cora separately.
You can DM me on Instagram at Korodono, Korodono.
You can DM me at the Near Plasma on Instagram, or you can leave us a comment under the video right now. Anime TV does come out every other Tuesday now rather than Wednesday. So make sure you support us and watch all of our other shows, and we will see you in 2 weeks.